Good evening, folks. I hope that you can hear me. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for showing such interest in Representative Chu and her comments, as well as support for the California wildfire victims. We sincerely appreciate that. I'm going to start by asking us to do that typical UU thing, and please put into the chat your name, your congregation, and your state so that Reverend Joseph and Representative Chu have a sense of who is in the room with them this evening. You're invited to put into the chat your preferred pronouns and a land acknowledgement as well. Please remember to mind your microphone and your video. If we hosts have to mute you or turn off your video, you may not be able to ask a question later or come back on video. Those controls are most often located by icons or buttons within your Zoom dialog box. They look like stylized microphones and video cameras. If you're attending using a smartphone, you might have to swipe around a bit to find those similar controls. And we ask that you treat each other with the same kindness you wish to receive. We can have differences of opinion without being snippy. We also ask you to try and stick to questions over statements and use I statements over you statements or we statements over they statements. And so as we allow our audience this evening to gather, I would once again ask you to please be kind to our guests and put into the chat your name, your congregation, your state, any preferred pronouns, a land acknowledgement if you desire to do so. This is all part of our culture of welcome and transparency as Unitarian Universalists. We're excited to have folks this evening, but there are some rules of engagement. So this session is off the record and closed to the press. If you're a member of the press and want comments from UUSJ or our guests, we direct you to their corresponding websites for the appropriate means of contact. In addition, independent audio and video recording, copying of slides or any other things going on in the session, or use of AI note-taking tools are prohibited without the written consent from UUSJ staff or our guests, and that is being withheld this evening. In addition, please be kind and please respect UUSJ's C3 status. We may be political, you can't get around that, but we are engaged in public policy and we are nonpartisan. The USJ is about issues. We're motivated by the idea that multiple oppressions are intertwined and that people must work together to end them. And we champion our UU values of love, interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. But we do so in a nonpartisan way. We invite you to attend this evening's session in that spirit. And we hope that you'll look for chat links in the chat, because we're going to offer you various signups and opportunities. And while you're doing that, please consider making a donation. The work ahead of us is significant. Plus, we'll be splitting the plate with California wildfire victims through the UA's Disaster Relief Fund's effort. So the more we collect this evening, the more we share. This evening, we have a 60-minute program for you. We're doing some housekeeping now, and then we'll get into some grounding by Reverend Joseph. Then we'll hear from Congresswoman Chu, her comments. Then we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll move to our soft closing. As usual for UUSJ, we'll do that soft closing. We'll allow anybody who wants to roll off and go on to the next piece of business for the evening to do so. That includes our guests. But for those who like to process together in community, we're going to do our warm and lingering goodbyes. So you'll have some time to reflect on what the Congresswoman says and share your thoughts with the group. So a word about UUSJ. For nearly 25 years at UUSJ, at Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice, we've been building our strength for this circumstance, even if we did not know this fight was coming during our lifetimes. As a UU faith movement, we have been grappling with injustice and pejorative politics for quite a while. Our history of defying oppression goes back even further than our current movement, if we're looking at the separate legacies of Unitarian and Universalist ancestors. And it is my belief that in the next 4 years, we're going to face many challenges. The stream of outsized, bigger than life assertions will continue. The mendacious and misleading statements will carry on. The onslaught of pernicious policy proposals will gather momentum. The unofficial oaths of fealty above and beyond the Constitution will abound, and the vitriol will spew. In my personal opinion, it appears that the autocrats have taken the bully pulpit and the oligarchs have moved into the front offices of our government. Plutocracy and cronyism may, in fact, rule the day. And I fear that it is a new dawn for Christian nationalism in America, with their eyes set on a Christian theocracy. I worry that the root harms will metastasize and spread. But having said that, the question is whether or not we will allow our nation to continue a flirtation with fascism, whether or not we will sit idly by and watch our democracy being dismantled and our liberties shorn away, whether or not we will watch as the tipping point is reached and breached. And I say we will not. We know how to do hard things as UUs. We are not afraid to meet the challenges as UUs. We will do so in somber optimism for our faith, our freedoms, our families, and our futures. And UUSJ continues to be a home for those who want to advocate, agitate, and witness to interrupt the interlocking injustices of federal policy violence. Our faith is about the liberty and freedom to cherish interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, generosity, and equity. Love remains our guiding principle and faith value. And we remind you and our other people that we are in it for the long haul, not the loophole. That our faith tradition teaches the power of redemption and transformation. And as Martin Luther King and Reverend Theodore Parker suggested, the arc of transformation that we inhabit is for justice. And that arc is long. It is long enough to bear the weight of this impending season of travesty, tragedy, and injustice. So we believe advocacy, witness, and education are the cornerstones of defiance. We know action is the antidote for despair. We maintain that community and fellowship are the fiber of resilience. And we trust that joy is the taproot of liberty. And when it is all over, we will be sure that we did everything possible within our power to mitigate and stop the worst outcomes, the deadliest damage, and the most heinous harms. So please follow the links in the chat that we will offer and sign up to help us do that work. And if that work sounds meaningful to you, please donate to UUSJ. Your financial support will help fund our defiance. And also know that your gifts tonight will help fund the resilience of the communities impacted by the California wildfires, because we will indeed split our plate with the folks suffering from those fires through the UUA's Disaster Relief Fund. So with that, I'm going to introduce the Reverend Joseph Santos Lyons, who will offer tonight's chalice lighting and homily as well as our closing prayer and charge for social justice. Paulette, would you please spotlight Reverend Joseph as I introduce him? Well, while Paulette's doing that, Reverend Joseph was raised in the Unitarian Universalist communities in Western North America on traditional Molaya and Chinook lands, and they currently serve as Drum's community minister. They are also a chief of staff for the representative CONFAM in the Oregon State Legislature. They are a co-parent of 3 young adults based in Antipolo City, Philippines, with the Center for Organizing, Renewal, and Leadership. After Harvard Divinity School and ordination, Reverend Joseph co-led power building and culture shifting grassroots groups in Oregon and Washington with communities of color focused on youth and environmental justice. They are the former UUA director of campus ministry and field organizing and co-founded the Community Ministers Retreat, now in its 15th year in the Pacific Northwest. Reverend Joseph is an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister serving transnational communities of color and organizing a new collective retreat in Metro Manila, primarily based in Southeast Asia. And their research focus is on the spiritual and anthropology, of religious liberals in the Philippines. And with that, I'm going to spend a moment looking for Reverend Joseph.
Thank you, Pablo. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, there we go. Thank you.
Wonderful. Just want to take a moment as we settle in just to invite folks, if you'd like to stretch a little bit and release and maybe wave also a little bit and settle in. This is definitely a really intense time, and it's good to be together. But also ask you to join me in a collective breath, to take a moment to breathe in and breathe out. Welcome to this collective space. And if it's possible, it'd be great to have whoever's doing tech to spotlight my other picture. Yeah, not this one, but the other one. The one that's not my profile picture, but the one that's my live face. I don't know who's doing the digital. And I appreciate being invited by UUs for Social Justice to offer a few minutes of a chalice lighting and a homily to ground us. And really kind of tickled and excited to be able to be in space again with Congresswoman Judy Chu, who I've looked up to for a long time. As we gather tonight, I want to start by asking you to center yourselves in the image of a spiral, a shape that has guided humanity for centuries, appearing in shells, galaxies, and ancient carvings. The spiral teaches us that life is not a straight line, but a journey of circling inward and outward, deepening and expanding with every turn. It reminds us, the spiral, that progress is rarely easy or linear, especially in moments like these when the world feels so uncertain. Fear and backlash loom large, and the next step, the next movement, can feel impossibly hard. The spiral calls us back to our core, reminding us of our values, beliefs, and relationships. It is in this sacred center that we find the clarity to move forward. Our Unitarian Universalist faith lifts up the principles of solidarity and siding with love as guides for these times. These are not abstract ideals, they are practices that root us in relationships and invite us to step forward with courage and purpose. Courage and purpose. Our faith reminds us that we are not alone. Each act of courage, each decision to move forward becomes part of the spiral's pattern, woven together by the communities and the places that sustain us. I think of when I first met Congresswoman Judy Chu through my work with the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. Congresswoman Chu was leading the Tri-Caucus, uniting Asian, Latino, Black lawmakers to amplify voices that were fighting for dignity and the resources to thrive. Watching her move with clarity and resolve, I had a model of what it means to build bridges, to create alliances across difference, and to hold a vision of justice. And that vision isn't easy. It requires that we keep showing up, even when fear and criticism surround us. It requires courage, not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And our courage grows in community, in the quiet daily acts of connection that deepen trust and build solidarity. We are facing a terrible moment of backlash fueled by xenophobia, right-wing forces targeting our communities and rolling back progress. Yet this is also a moment where we as Unitarian Universalists must meet the challenge. And yes, we can. Si se puede. Our faith calls us to side with love, to risk boldly, to embody justice, dignity, and mutual care. So this evening together, as we reflect on the spiral of each of our journeys, let us check our capacity for risk. Let us ask ourselves, what is the next part of my spiral? Where can I find courage? Who can I turn to for support? Because the truth is, we are in this together. As we light this chalice, let it be a symbol of our shared courage and solidarity. Let it remind us of the relationships that sustain us and the values that guide us. Together, step by step, piece by piece, movement by movement, we can move toward this beloved community we long to create. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Whoa. Okay. So with that, we appreciate you, Reverend Joseph. Thank you so much for giving us some grounding and lighting our chalice. And I want to take a moment and just offer a word about why Congresswoman Chu's message matters to us UUs. The crisis of conscience in the United States is, in my opinion, official. We've received a suspect national emergency at our southern border being declared. A dubious national energy emergency has also been proclaimed, and it's been paired with a drill baby drill mantra. We've received official admonishment that there are only two genders, male and female. And then came the onslaught of challenges to our Constitution and norms. And the torrent of policy has been revealed, in fact, as executive orders and the corresponding news. I'm not sure that you're aware, but today in Atlanta, ICE agents attempted to serve arrest warrants at a church, and it's the first instance that we know of. Paulette, can you handle that? What's going on? Who is that?
It says Mike McMiniman's screen is sharing.
Yeah, I'm trying to work that. Okay. Apologies. That's the first time it's happened to you, USJ. So, in any case, I think we're all pleased to hear from Congresswoman Chu this evening. And so let me introduce her. Judy Chu was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in July 2009. She represents the 28th Congressional District, which includes Pasadena and the San Gabriel Valley of Southern California. Representative Chu currently serves on the powerful House Ways and Means Committee, which has jurisdiction over legislation pertaining to taxes, revenues, Social Security, and Medicare. In that committee, Representative Chu is a member of the subcommittee on health, worker, and family support and oversight, giving her oversight of healthcare reform and crucial safety net programs. She also serves on the House Small Business Committee, which has oversight of the Small Business Administration. In 2011, Representative Chu was elected chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, which Reverend Joseph mentioned. And that caucus advocates for the needs and concerns of the Asian American and Pacific Islander community across the nation. And she helps lead the Tri-Caucus, a joint effort with the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Representative Chu also co-founded and co-chairs the Congressional Creative Rights Caucus, which advocates for the copyright protections of those in the creative industries, such as music, film, and the visual arts, which I would expect from somebody near Hollywood. And she also serves in leadership of the House Democratic Caucus as a member of the Steering and Policy Committee. And some of Representative Chu's proudest accomplishments in Congress include introducing and passing a congressional resolution of regret for the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, working with President Obama to declare the San Gabriel Mountains a national monument, requiring the Department of Defense to address military hazing, helping entrepreneurs by establishing 2 new small business development centers in the San Gabriel Valley, and helping small businesses refinance old, expensive real estate loans by reviving the Small Business Administration's 504 loan refinance program. And I'll just add here, I know plenty of small business owners, and I know those are important things. Representative Chu was first elected to the Board of Education for Garvey School District in 1985. And from there, she was elected to the Monterey Park City Council, where she served as mayor 3 times. And then she was elected to the State Assembly and then California's elected tax board, known as the State Board of Equalization. And in 2029, she became a well-known name to most of us UUs when she became the first Chinese American woman elected to Congress in history. So Representative Chu lives with her husband, Michael Eng, in the city of Monterey Park, where they have been residents for over 30 years. And yes, Judy Chu is one of our own. She is one of the few Unitarian Universalists serving in Congress. And so I give you Congresswoman Judy Chu.
Well, thank you, Pablo, for that very kind introduction, and to the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice for inviting me to speak with you all today. I want to thank you especially for making today's event a fundraiser to benefit those impacted by the fires in California, and for your generosity in a time when so many people are in need. As Pablo mentioned, I represent California's 28th Congressional District, which includes the cities of Pasadena and Altadena, which have been completely devastated by the Eaton fire earlier this month. This devastating fire destroyed over 9,500 structures, left 20,000 people homeless, and took at least 17 lives as it tore through Altadena and northern Pasadena. First responders and homeowners are still sorting through the rubble and learning what is left and can be rebuilt. But I know that we have a long road ahead of us. And that road to recovery absolutely must include support from the federal government. And in fact, I have been in Washington, D.C. fighting to ensure that Congress pass a disaster assistance package for our area. I think this will be one of the worst disasters in our nation's history. And this disaster aid must come with no strings attached and no conditions, just as we've done for every other disaster aid package in our nation's history. In fact, we did it just this past December for the victims of Hurricanes Milton and Helene from Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee. Now, I know that when I was casting my vote, I didn't think about whether the victims of these hurricanes were Democrats or Republicans. I thought about how these were families who lost everything and needed help. That's why on Friday, I went to the Pacific Palisades on the west side of Los Angeles, where the other fire is. And I had issued a letter for President Trump to come and see the devastation for himself. He actually did come. And in previous statements, he was saying that he was threatening to withhold federal aid from these victims. So I knew that I had to meet with him so I could tell him not to forget Altadena and Pasadena and to make sure he knows that we need his partnership to recover from this disaster. Wildfires have no political affiliation. They know no political party. As Americans, we have each other's backs during these times of immense need. And we have to do the same for the victims of these fires. I tell you, I won't rest until we get them all the federal support they need and deserve with no strings attached. I was glad that in the conversation with the president, he actually promised to be with the victims of the fire 100%. And I plan to hold him to this promise because supporting disaster victims means not attaching extraneous strings. Like in previous statements, he said he would not do it unless we passed a voter ID law first, or said that first, in order to give that aid, Congress has to raise the debt ceiling in order to finance the GOP's tax giveaway to billionaires. We know that despite the fact that Donald Trump ran for office by promising to bring the cost of living down for ordinary Americans, the first thing on the agenda is for the new Republican majority in Congress to pass a giant tax bill filled with giveaways to billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And we know that that is his top priority, not necessarily disaster aid, but we can see what's going on because in 2017, they passed this GOP tax scam, which served only as a giveaway to the mega rich, paid for on the backs of everyday Americans. Now, as a member of the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, which oversees tax policy, I did have a front row seat to Republicans' efforts the first time this happened, and I'm committed to fighting this once again. When I say that this law will be paid for in the backs of working people, what I mean is that in order to satisfy their base, Republicans are going to gut critical programs that help Americans afford health care, protect our environment, and help hungry people afford food. The latest proposal floating around Washington, D.C. shows that House Republicans are looking to cut at least $2 trillion, that's trillion with a T, by cutting Medicaid, the federal program designed to help low-income Americans afford their health care. The current proposal would institute something called a per capita cap on Medicaid spending, meaning each state would receive a lump sum of money to cover all of their health care costs for that year. So if costs rise, it's on the state to make up the difference, which means that the states would most likely make drastic cuts by paying doctors less or offering less coverage for things like childbirth or diabetes. When this was last proposed in the 2017 effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act, the Congressional Budget Office, which is the nonpartisan entity tasked with estimating the impact of federal laws, estimated that about half of Americans currently on Medicaid will become uninsured. That is millions of Americans without health insurance overnight. Republicans have also proposed adding so-called work requirements to Medicaid. This was a tactic used in the last Trump administration, ostensibly to incentivize people who receive health care through the federal government to work in order to receive benefits. But in reality, these measures do not help people get jobs. Instead, they primarily serve as health care barriers, trying to stop people from getting it. But you don't need to take my word for it. Studies conducted on states that instituted work requirements under the Trump administration found that there was no statistical increase in the number of beneficiaries working. And in some cases, it actually led to a decrease in employment, and households became less stable. The only thing work requirements were effective in doing is pushing people off Medicaid in order to save money. Since Republicans in Congress would rather spend money on giving tax breaks to billionaires, this was, of course, the goal. The proposals on how to pay for all these tax breaks come from all areas of federal spending. There's a proposal to roll back tailpipe rules and fuel efficiency benchmarks for cars and light trucks. Instead, the next tax scam would give tax breaks to big oil companies and car manufacturers while our air becomes harder and harder to breathe. There's proposals for cuts to SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, which helps hungry families put food on the table. There's proposed cuts to retirement benefits for federal employees who've given their lives to public service, and proposed cuts to student loan programs that help young people afford an education, and proposals for increases in fees for those seeking asylum in the United States. In reality, we are in the greatest era of wealth inequality in this country since the Gilded Age. Prices are rising faster than wages, and Donald Trump and congressional Republican solution is to go all in on tax breaks for corporations and the wealthiest in our country. They will get a windfall tax break, and who pays for it? The middle class. So who wins? Corporations, billionaires, millionaires, and the Trump family. Who loses? Women, families, seniors, teachers, students. The last time we faced this fight, the American people saw right through the facade. Now things are different and people are disillusioned. But we cannot turn away from what is happening right in front of our eyes, which is one of the largest transfers of wealth from working people to the billionaire class in our history. Well, unfortunately, one of the most brutal realities of the second Trump administration is already on us, and that is in the area of immigration. And it's a focus on mass deportations and demonizing immigrants in this country. While the majority of immigrants said that the economy was their number one concern on Election Day, Donald Trump is using his victory as a mandate to enact the most draconian anti-immigrant policies of our lifetime. On day one, we saw the president unleash a slew of executive orders aimed at intimidating, arresting, deporting, and dehumanizing immigrants in this country. Perhaps the most egregious examples of this is the executive order to end birthright citizenship in this country. This 14th Amendment, though, is crystal clear. Anyone who is born in this country is a citizen of this country. And in fact, immediately, 22 states, including California, sued to stop this executive order from going into place. And a federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan called this a blatantly unconstitutional order. To return this country to a time when an entire class of people born in this country are not considered American is not just backward, it's horrifying. But even though the executive order has been paused, the threat is nowhere near from over. Trump ran on a platform of mass deportation, one that he clearly intends to follow through on. He rescinded a federal policy that prevented ICE from carrying out deportations in places such as hospitals, schools, and churches. And within hours of his inauguration, there were already ICE raids being carried out in blue states with the express purpose of instilling fear. Since Donald Trump's inauguration, ICE has conducted a nationwide operation that resulted in over 538 arrests across the United States. I've been working with immigration groups and my colleagues in the Congressional Progressive Caucus to help disseminate important Know Your Rights fact sheets so that if you or anyone you know is stopped by ICE, you know what your rights are. The point of these mass ICE raids is fear, and the best weapon we can arm ourselves with is our knowledge of our rights and how to protect ourselves and our neighbors. So I encourage all of you who are worried about these effects and efforts to share. I hope that you can, in fact, share these Know Your Right fact sheets with your communities. You never know the difference that you could make in someone's life with it. I also want to talk about some of the things the Trump administration will likely bring back, like the Muslim ban. I will never forget that day in January 2017 when the Muslim ban was first announced. I was on my way to speak at an event when I received a frantic call letting me know that about 50 Muslims who held green cards and were legitimate entries were being detained at Los Angeles International Airport for hours and with no end in sight. At that moment, I decided to drop everything I could and help in any way I could. I rushed over to LAX to advocate for these people. And once I arrived, I found that indeed there were scores of people with similar stories. People with a legal right to be here, kept for hours without food and blocked from receiving legal advice from an attorney. It was outrageous. And when I pressed the Customs and Border Protection for answers, they resisted and blocked me. I even got them on the phone only to have them hang up on me. I'd never been more disrespected as a member of Congress. It was clear for those of us on the ground that this policy was poorly conceived and hastily executed, and moreover, that it was motivated by prejudice and started causing pain as soon as it was signed. The original Muslim ban was partially blocked by the courts and eventually rescinded by President Biden. But now it is indeed in danger of coming back. And in fact, one of the executive orders the president signed on day one lays the groundwork for a second iteration of Muslim ban. It sets a 60-day window for top state justice, intelligence, and homeland security officials to identify countries whose vetting and screening processes are so deficient as to warrant a partial or full suspension on the admission of nationals from those countries. That is why we must make sure this cruelty does not happen again. And that is why Senator Chris Coons of Delaware and I originally introduced the No Ban Act in the spring of 2019. This bill amends the Immigration and National Act to require that any future travel ban is based on credible facts and actual threats. The bill also requires the president to work in consultation with the Department of State and Homeland Security to provide evidence of why a ban is needed and to brief Congress within 48 hours of taking action. In other words, it requires policies to be based on facts and not fear. I was proud that this was the first pro-Muslim civil rights bill ever voted on positively in the House. And I'm going to reintroduce this bill in the coming weeks because we need policies like these more than ever. And while we do not have majorities in Congress right now, we cannot stop fighting against these injustices as they come up. The last topic I'd like to discuss with you all today is the ongoing assault on reproductive rights by the extreme right in this country. Since the Supreme Court's MAGA majority voted to overturn 50 years of precedent in the Dobbs decision, We've seen state after state enact abortion bans, ripping away bodily autonomy from millions of women in this country. Right now, 19 states have either partial or total bans on abortion. But since then, the American people have stood up and stood together. They rejected these attacks on our fundamental right to bodily autonomy to make decisions on our own bodies. Voters in state after state have resoundingly voted in favor of protecting abortion access and fighting back against anti-abortion initiatives from the extreme right wing. And in fact, in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Kentucky, Montana, and in my home state of California, voters showed us that they support abortion access. Even in 2024, when the election did not go the way we wanted it to, ballot initiatives supporting access to abortion passed in 7 of the 10 states where they were on the ballot. And one of those states was Florida, where access to abortion received well over 50% of the vote, but did not clear the higher threshold of 60% put in place by anti-abortion lawmakers to prevent the initiative from becoming law. What we need and what American women deserve is a national right to abortion care in every state and in every zip code. And that is why I am working with my congressional colleagues to reintroduce my bill, the Women's Health Protection Act, or WIPA. My bill will create a federal right to abortion access no matter what your zip code. It also ensures that states cannot erode that right by passing arbitrary and medically unnecessary bans that we know chip away at abortion access. My bill passed the House twice under Speaker Pelosi, but with Republicans in charge of the House, we will not be able to pass the bill. This I know. But I will be reintroducing WIPA this spring because I believe it's essential that we not only speak up against what we see happening when rights are taken away, but also show our vision to America of how they can be restored and protected. Some have asked me how to keep fighting in a moment like this when everything seems bleak. But I'll say this, change feels like it happens overnight, but it actually takes a very, very long time. I first introduced WIPA in 2013 when it did not have the support of the entire Democratic caucus. Now, it's our number 2 bill that we as Democrats consider as part of our policy platform. And unlike in 2017, when we were blindsided by the Trump presidency, we know how to respond and we know how to win. I will never forget the response to the attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. There were 70 of them. I know because I had to vote on all of them. The congressional switchboard was overwhelmed. Our offices were flooded with callers and mail asked to save the law. Protesters were in the hallways and in our districts demanding their health care be protected. And you know what? It worked. The repeal efforts were stopped, and while we were unable to stop the passage of the GOP tax scam, we were able to get the message out to the American people about who Donald Trump and the Republicans were really working for. And it was crystal clear that the answer was they were not working for working people. It was the wealthy elite. And so we defended the Affordable Care Act. Now, this time, we are actually in a better position because Republicans are operating with a razor-thin margin in the House. In fact, right now, it is just a 2-vote difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. It's 217 to 215. And that is why our attention and the pressure we put on elected officials matters so much. If we can persuade just a few Republicans who won their seats in a district won by Kamala Harris that are doing something like voting for the tax bill or draconian immigration bill, you know, it could really cost them in the next election. Then, if we get their support, we can stop these efforts in their tracks. We did it last time with the ACA, and that was with a much, much larger Republican majority in the House. So we've done it before, and we believe we can do it again. I look forward to taking your questions and discussing more about where we go from here and how we can help each other over the next 2 years.
Thank you so much, Representative Chu. So I'm gonna add myself to the spotlight. And I'm going to invite people to raise their electronic hands and ask a question, cogent, succinct. The Congresswoman has another event coming up shortly, so we want to just ask those questions. And as you're gathering your thoughts, I'll ask the big one that keeps on coming up in the chat to me privately. What else should we be doing as Unitarian Universalists, as people who care about these issues? You know, we hear that there's lots of opportunity in the federal framework right now because of the vote margins you just mentioned. But how do we actually get the attention of the members of Congress so that we can apply this pressure that you're suggesting we need to apply?
Well, first, we really need to make sure the American people understand who is for them. See, they didn't quite understand that this concept in the last election. This we know. Somehow, because Trump was so angry and so much a person who seemed like he would change things for the better, they listened to him. But our voices really need to be louder and they need to be clearer. And I think we need to make sure they understand that really so much of these efforts that Trump is making is for the billionaires. I mean, did you watch that inauguration with the three billionaires just right next to Trump? I mean, made it so clear that so much of this is to get the wealthy to be wealthier. And this is the reason why, even though our economy is actually doing relatively well, so many people feel like they can't afford things and that they have no hope for the future. And I think it is also because there is such an incredible wealth gap in this country that, you know, that we have to actually bring to light. I'm not sure if people really understand this. So I think we have to have clearer voices to speak to the people so that they understand this. And then we have to make sure that the people who are the activists will get out there to protest like we did with the ACA.
You're muted.
Karen, please ask your question. Karen, you are muted.
I sometimes feel that, and I mean no disrespect, that the Democrats in the House and in the Senate don't get out into the communities where Republicans are, where they can actually get the correct information or appear on places like Fox News. There's somehow we have to reach Republicans in small communities who don't hear this stuff. I sometimes feel like not you necessarily, but Democrats are speaking to the choir. We all agree and we can do our work. I called my senators today in Texas about a school bill. So there are lots of things that we can do, but what does the Democratic Party itself, how do they reach out into the community to get that information out there?
And they replace those breakers, those individual.
Well,
things twice.
I totally agree with you. We have to get out there to all corners of America, including where there are rural Republicans. And we have to get out to areas where there are disaffected young people. And we have to really make them believe that we are the ones fighting for them. And so it means making sure that they hear what we're doing to make life affordable for them, because that's kind of like the number one message in that they are listening to right now. They want somebody to fight for them. And so we need to make sure that we are very clear on that. But I totally agree with you that we have to do that. Trump was somehow able to kind of get disaffected groups and identify them and then appeal to them. And we need to make sure that we get out there to everybody, every group that might feel that they are not a part of America.
Thank you, Representative Chu. Um, I'm going to manage the questions. We need to be succinct. Please stick to short questions. Unitarian Universalist trustee Eliseo Santana, please ask your question.
Eliseo Santana. I'm in Clearwater, and I'm also a trustee of the UUSJ. I'm a Puertorriqueño, and therefore born U.S. citizen. But obviously, I look Hispanic. I am Hispanic, and some of the immigration issues that been brought out, the enforcement has been affecting a lot of our fellow citizens that are not undocumented, people like myself. Is there a way of protecting that segment of the population by also protecting people like me that look Hispanic, that are being pointed in enforcing the laws that they are putting out that are not right? In other words, is there something that prevents them from asking me for proving who I am just because I'm Hispanic looking?
Well,
Thank you.
you identify a real issue for people that's going on right now. And with these sweeps, I am certain that U.S. citizens will be swept up as well. And we have to expose this. This is not right. I know that the American people seem to have said that immigration was their number one issue, but did they really think that people born in the U.S. should be subject to a terribly horrendous, traumatic, and unfair sweep as well? I don't think so. So we have to defend them in terms of making sure that they have their legal rights and that they have the proper legal representation. But we also have to really expose this. I tell you, when Trump was separating children from their families, that became such a big issue that Trump actually had to go back on that. So we need to expose these terrible things that we know will happen, but also make sure people get the proper legal representation.
Representative Chu, let me ask a question. Do you have any particular concerns for the Asian American Pacific Islander population as well? I mean, the issue that Eliseo puts his finger on, it would seem to apply to that community as well.
Well, thank you for asking about that, because there are 15,000 Southeast Asian refugees with final deportation orders. What happened is that when they came here as refugees, there was not a lot of resources for them. So they ended up in the poorest neighborhoods and just were on their own to survive.
I'll get hold of her. Hang on.
So many of them got into trouble, and they ended up serving time for something or another, but they actually served it. They came out and lived a good life. In fact, many of them rehabilitated themselves and have been upstanding citizens for like 40 years. But they have this final order of deportation on them. And this also goes against an arrangement that was made to support these refugees, since these refugees actually helped America, during the war. So anyway, I have a bill, and it's to stop these deportations from happening, and to make sure that they cannot act on these final orders of deportations. But I actually fear quite a bit about this one. They might be the first target for Trump because he's saying he's going after people with criminal records.
My heart goes out to that community. Linda, please ask your question.
Hi, I'm in Sarasota, Florida, and our congregation is trying to protect the transgender folks in our area because Florida is pretty bad. And I was wondering if there's anything going on in the Congress to help protect these people instead of trying to erase them.
We have numerous bills that we have introduced to protect transgender persons. Certainly, we have done everything that we can on our side to make that happen. But as you know, we don't control the House or the Senate, so it is difficult to actually get anything passed into law. Nonetheless, we're using our bully pulpit, the speeches on the floor, the press conferences that we can do to talk about this as loudly as we can, because it is not right. Actually, I want to tell you, we have our first transgender person elected to Congress too.
Yes, Sarah McBride.
Sarah McBride. She's really a terrific member of Congress. And the Republicans are so nasty that they wanted to prevent her from being able to use a woman's restroom.
Where is that at? Are they still trying to do that?
So they relented to some extent because of all the protests that we had. And so yeah, they haven't enforced this.
That's good news. Thank you.
Yeah, and it shows when we resist, when we don't obey in advance, we can create the space for the things we need and want. We may not get everything, but we get more than if we just stay silent and say there's nothing that's possible. Jewel, please ask your question, and then we're gonna try and scoot through these, but it depends on you guys asking quick questions.
Okay, thank you, Congresswoman, for your time, and thank you, USJ, for holding the space. So, as we're all concerned about protections, my question is, at the end of Biden's administration, he affirmed that the Equal Rights Amendment is law, but he didn't instruct the archivist to formally add it to the Constitution. So, given the possibility that the court might reject this, can you talk for a moment about where we stand in that process and what we can do as the public to support its inclusion?
Well, I am a member of the ERA caucus, so yeah, we were pushing for it to be included by the archivist. So President Biden kind of went partially there, but didn't go the whole way, and we were very disappointed. But we are still hoping that we can get it through, and we'll just have to wait though for another president to be open to it. So we would have to wait for another Democratic president.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mary, and then Kathy, and then Bob.
Hello, Representative.
Thank you very much for being here and explaining things to us. I have a twofold question, brief, regarding the many thousands of people who are subject to losing their Medicaid benefits. Number one, I heard that it is in the crosshairs of the Trump administration to be eliminated or impacted as early as February 1st. So I'd like to find out if you know anything about that. And secondly, considering Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, it's being targeted first. And I was wondering if it's because of the population that is receiving the benefits. If the administration was trying to take it away from, the seniors with Medicare and Social Security, it might get more pushback. From Medicaid, people having disabilities and low income, there would be less pushback. Your opinion, please.
So I was talking about the Republicans' number one focus, which is to pass what was the 2017 tax scam bill. They want to put in a version that is even more severe in terms of giving more breaks to billionaires. So, they in the last bill, they reduced the corporate tax rate from 35 to 21%. Corporations weren't even asking for that drastic of a tax break. But now President Trump wants to make it 15%. So how do they give these massive breaks to billionaires? Well, they can't cut defense in their view. Other areas are off limits. The one area where they have their target is on Medicaid. That's why I focused on that, because poor people, right? So what do they care? I do think Medicaid is a big target. I don't think it'd be in February, though, because I think that's too soon for them to be able to get this bill in place. But they are going at super speed to get this tax bill together using this process called reconciliation, which they like because the bill could pass with only a majority vote rather than face the 60 vote limit. In other words, a filibuster that would stop such a bill in the Senate. So yes, I think Medicaid is in serious trouble, but it would hurt so many people, and I hope they realize that actually half of Medicaid goes to seniors who are in nursing homes. It would really hurt seniors.
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you so much. I was the next to speak. I'm Kathy Rye. I'm a registered professional engineer here in California. So I feel for you and your constituents down there in Southern California. All the best to you guys. Two things. One is for reproductive age women. There is universal choice now that Roe v. Wade is repealed. So if you have friends in Congress in reproductive restrictive states, it's pandiahealth.com, PANDIA, every day. So anyone anywhere in the world with internet and a mailbox can have whatever they need mailed to them. And with ACA, thank you for saving it, for $39 a year, they can talk to a doctor and then have whatever they need mailed to them. So that's the first one. And then second one, I attended a electrification for homes workshop yesterday, and the average family of 4 home takes about $32,000 to retrofit so that we can all decarbonize. But if you look at defense, you mentioned military defense spending is off the table for discussion. They're spending for a family of 4, over $74,000 a year per year. Okay. And then just as an engineer, so thank you for thinking like an engineer. I see you problem solving like one. This is my last point. I saw a study that shows that 10% of the military budget can clothe, house, educate, and feed everyone. And we are yet raising it 10% every year. That's disgusting to me. So my question to you is, will you sign on to be a member of the Defense Spending Reduction Caucus, please, and encourage your fellow Congress members to do that?
Well,
Thank you.
I will certainly take a look at that. There are a lot of caucuses in Congress, so I didn't even know such a caucus existed.
Yeah,
So,
it was just founded by Barbara Lee. She's in my district. I'm at here at Albany, California. She's in Oakland.
oh yeah. Well, of course, now she's running for mayor of Oakland, and she, but
So
no,
Latifa did say that she wanted to support it, but I don't see her name on it. I see only 5 names so far. 5.
yeah. Well, the defense spending is out of control, and there were reports that were generated by entities like the GAO, Government Accountability Office, very legitimate ways to cut defense spending, but it's a taboo for Republicans. They don't want to perceived as voting for anything that would make us less able to defend our country. As a result, there are so many unnecessary things that we spend money on in our defense budget. And that is certainly a place that is ripe for sensible cuts.
Okay, so the very last question will go to Bob Shields. I'm so sorry to the others, but we can always follow up. And then we will have Reverend Joseph close us out in prayer. Bob?
Congresswoman, thank you for your time tonight. You mentioned the reconciliation bill as a really important issue, and also the real narrow majority that the Republicans have in the House. What can we do to take down that reconciliation bill? Can you point us at some potential Republicans that we might be able to influence for some reason that, but at least, well, maybe if they can't take it down, at least remove some of these really insidious elements of it?
Well, there is a schism between Republicans because certain Republicans want to give huge tax breaks to billionaires who already have huge tax breaks, but that will cost trillions of dollars. And on the other end of the Republican spectrum are those Republicans who are deficit hawks. They don't want to spend any more money on anything. And so I think we should exploit that schism. I think it'll be hard for Republicans to negotiate amongst themselves on this particular issue. So I think that they will have to really talk a lot and come to some kind of, unusual conclusion to actually, cross this divide between the different people. But I think it's actually an opportunity for us to create divisions and see if there are Republicans who won't vote for it.
And with that, thank you so much, Representative Chu. We're going to ask, we appreciate you. We understand that you have to go. We've already held you 5 minutes over time. So thank you so much for giving us your time. And we're going to ask Reverend Joseph to close us out in prayer. Paulette, can you spotlight Reverend Joseph?
Pablo, I'm checking in to see if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see
You
you.
can. Wonderful. Well, friends, we're coming to the end of our evening. I just want to offer these closing words. Spirit of life, the breath that moves through all things. As we prepare to leave this sacred space, we call upon you to guide us onward, circling back to our center and moving outward once again. We are on the edge of change, carrying the weight of the experience and duty of what is to come, and holding the fire of possibility deep within us. Grant us the courage, the kind that grows like a spiral, rooted in our values and expanding with each word and action. Courage to speak truth even when our voices shake. Courage to act boldly even when the path ahead feels uncertain. Courage to do and take the next action in our lifelong journey, grounded in community and place. Remind us that we do not move along this path alone. We are part of an interconnected web, woven with the threads of relationships, connected to the land and the stars, strengthened by the hands of ancestors and companions. As we extinguish this chalice, its flame does not fade. It transforms. It moves with us, spiraling outward, lighting our way forward as we take that next step. Let us go from this gathering rooted in the truths that hold us steady, the inherent worth of all people, and the transformative power of love. Go, my beloveds, risk for justice, practice with intention, and move together toward that beloved community where all are free, all are seen, and all are cherished. Blessed be.
Thank you so much, Reverend Joseph. We appreciate your leadership in the Unitarian Universalist tradition. So with that, we come to our soft close. If you've got other business to do this evening, please go ahead and do that. But I'm going to hang around in our warm and lingering goodbyes and try to answer some of your questions or help process some of the content that we heard this evening. So I invite you to do that. If there's no interest, then I will go tuck my kiddo into bed. But if you do have some interest to speak for a little bit, then I'm here to help you process in that sort of post-services coffee hour vibe that our base seems to love.
Thank you so much, Pablo, for calling on me. I've been wanting to say that to a Congress member for a long, long time and have been frustrated. So thank you for letting me be heard. I'm Kathy Rye, the engineer that just spoke last. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm gonna, so the rules still apply, right? Try to stick to I statements rather than you statements, and try to stick to we statements rather than they statements. And I'm gonna recognize the electronic hand of Emily. Go for it, Emily.
Thanks, Pablo. I saw that somebody posted the link about the Know Your Rights cards. Does UUSJ have a version of the card that you recommend that we should all be handing out in Spanish or Chinese or whatever?
Yeah, there are quite a few of them out there now, and they're all excellent. And they're crafted by organizations with much better and larger communications capacity than we have. But our immigration action team is in fact aggregating some of those materials. And so you'll see them in our February, you should see them in our February e-news, and that'll come out on Monday, February 3rd. So look for that stuff there. And we have plenty of members of our immigration action team on the call. So for those of them that help craft the e-news, you know, the people have asked for it. Now we got to deliver it.
Exactly. We'll print them and hand them out then. Thank you.
Dr. Lorraine.
Yes, I'd like to pick up on Congresswoman's idea about identifying the schism in the defense budget issues between the Republicans, because I think there's going to be a lot of controversy being generated by this incompetent Department of Defense director. And coming from a military family, I know there are a lot of military people who do not want to be sent to work to get rid of our immigrants. And we should remember the days when the UUs were the ones who took in the people who morally objected to the Vietnam War. And I think we should move forward on this. And I'd be very interested in working in a small group of other people who are interested. We have a statement of conscience about creating peace that we should be speaking out about. And I believe now is the time to do it. And I'm pleased to hear that that might be an area where we could be effective in lobbying and advocating.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lorraine. Georgianne.
I am just now making an attempt, which it's too long. I'm a member of the Immigration Action Team, everybody, and we have a list of 32 districts that the congressperson was elected with less than 5% of a win. And if any of you live in these districts, we need you to help us. But I'm not able to post that it's too big.
What I'd recommend is we can certainly circulate the list after the event. But if you
okay.
happen to know that your member of Congress won by a rather narrow margin, please send an email to the address that Georgianne already put into the chat.
And I'll put it in again. We are
Please do.
galvanizing.
And I will say, I think if you're interested in helping your church, your congregation cultivate and build up a democracy action team of its own in affiliation with what UUSJ is doing, then please reach out. I'll ask Fred or a member of the democracy action team to stick their email in there too. Because frankly, the members of Congress who won by small margins in the House and in the Senate are the people who are looking towards the next election already. And they may not agree with us, but they're going to give us the best chance for swaying some votes. So if they had a close election this time in the House, they're going to be up for they expect to be up for a close election in the midterms. If they're senators, they're looking at that 2026 race and wondering what the heck they're going to do. So, we're in a process of sounding out which congregations in or near those districts want to engage in federal advocacy with our teams and really lean into a relationship of advocacy. So if you get an email that's a little bit of a cold call, like, hey, UUSJ wants to talk to you, please pay attention to it. Abby, my good friend in DC.
Thanks for putting this together, Pablo. And I have to say, I was disappointed by the responses to questions asked by Representative Chu, particularly that you just gave a more concrete answer to what we can do than she was able to say. And I feel that listing all the things that we know are happening isn't a call to action. It's sort of a dump. And I'm concerned that Democrats and citizens are just going to fuss and whine for 4 years, hoping for the best. And that's certainly not what Trump did. I mean, he fussed and whined, and then he got busy. And what is happening really isn't a surprise. He broadcast what he was going to do. And I'm just disappointed.
I think that if any person who feels that way needs to tell their member of Congress that. I mean, I'm not going to comment on what it's like to be in front of a room of national constituents and I don't know what it's like to be a member of Congress. I know what it's like to collaborate with them, and I know that they're extremely careful. I think all of them are being extremely careful now, especially now. But if that's how you feel, then we as constituents need to really stop saying, so now I'll turn it around a little bit, right? When UUSJ asks UUs to come talk to their member of Congress, we often hear, my guy's great. They're a Democrat. They vote the right way. Well, we're seeing the need to engage everyone play out in front of us. Too many members of Congress agreed with the Lakin Riley bill and passed it. Too many members of Congress thought that HR 9495 was a good deal or a good idea, and we had to roll them back. We had to actively roll them back during December. So when we say that our democracy, when it's operating at its best, is a participatory event, that's what we're talking about. So yes, Abby, let's get you with a staffer from your rep. I know who your representative. I'm not going to put them on the spot, but let's get you into the room so you can say that, because they need to hear it. I will tell you, UUSJ was in meetings all throughout last year on the topic of democracy, and we heard from several members of Congress versions of the following statement. Pablo, UUSJ, the members of Congress who are in blue districts surrounded by red districts need to hear from people like you. They need to get some support, and they need to hear that standing up for our democracy is worth fighting for. They must do it, and that somebody out there in the wilderness of the United States will have their back, even if it's just emotional. So that is the work for the next 2 years, in part. It's not the only thing, but it's in part that work, because we need all of those folks to really stand up for our democracy and if the Republicans, if the autocrats who are flirting with fascism are going to try and use our established democratic process and legislative forum to try and ram down our throats a different version of the United States than what we have already been struggling to improve, then we need to stand up. And if you can't go to a rally, fine. I got bad knees. I know what that's about. But you can call your members of Congress. You can hound them. You can show up to their town halls. You can tell them, I want you to be forward-leaning in defense of our democracy, and let them figure out what that means. They have staff to help them figure that out. They have much better intelligence and political scientists helping them cut the data, so on and so forth. What you can do is hold their gosh darn feet to the fire in defense of our democracy. That's why our democracy team started out being called the Defending Democracy Team, because it's needed, and it's been needed for quite a few electoral cycles now. In fact, in some ways, we're at the conclusion of a 20-year legal coup. I'm not the only one to say this, but smarter people than me have been saying it. But like, we're living out the consequences of having slightly been asleep at the wheel for the past 20 years. So now is the time to figure out what you can do. I'm not asking you to reorganize your entire life, although you might want to do that. I'm not asking you to put your body in danger, although you might want to do that. But I'm asking you to take seriously the project that our democracy action team has been talking about for the last year and a half. How are you going to catalyze a reemergence of a robust civil society that is brave? That is the project for the next 2 years, and you can figure out how to contribute to it. If it's hounding your minister to give a sermon about the threats to our democracy once a month, then do it. That's a good use of your time if you feel that that will help raise the issues. And please, when we email you and we ask you to click on something, do that. And if we ask you to give a ring to a senator, try that. You don't have to do all 50. You could just do yours. And when we invite you to trainings and learning events so that you can become a better advocate and activist within your own ecology of concern, take us up on our offers. Now, you can't do everything. I'm not asking you to do everything. There's going to be a fire hose thrown at us. We can't do it all. But we all have to take seriously the project of figuring out what we can do and commit to. So I'll get off my soapbox because I don't really like lecturing you. But Lisa seems to have a statement.
Yes, two things. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
One is, one of the things that seems to be driving Republicans right now is the Project 2025. And it seems to me that on the other side, on the progressive side, we've got a lot of really good ideas. Can we create a plan? Because without a plan, it's hard to be coordinated and organized. We have all these great ideas coming from different places, and if we're not working together, it's going to be hard. And one way to work together is to have a common vision, a common goal, and a project plan to get there. I used to be a project manager. The other thing is that I live in a rural area now, and for some reason, rural areas seem to be Republican, but I don't understand why. And is there anything we can do to reach out more? Maybe it's dealing with some of the objections people have to very, very progressive ideas. I don't know what it is, but I think we have a message probably for rural areas as well, and that's just not being heard very well.
Well, I think there are advocacy and justice coalitions that operate in rural spaces, and what I will say is that I think it's strategically unwise to discount rural spaces, if for no other reason than it is in rural spaces where they are suffering the consequences of automation. And automation is the foundation for what we're now experiencing with AI. So if you're worried about AI taking away jobs and taking away people's capacity to do things, then just imagine what it's like to be in a farming family and watch John Deere and Monsanto make it impossible for you to operate in the way that your grandparents did. That reality of automation runs through our economy, and it certainly touches on rural spaces. And so if you're searching for a point of commonality to begin a dialogue with your neighbors who are in rural spaces, I suggest that you start there. And then I suggest that you explore their attitudes about proper stewardship for the land, right? Because I feel like there's actually a lot of potential for common understanding and moral concern around how we actually do our farming. A lot of farmers want to be doing sustainable practices. They just don't know how to get out of the monocropping and the single sourcing infrastructure that has been built up for them and reinforced with every single farm bill. So start there, be friendly, be open to hearing, try to be an active listener for the root causes and root harms, because that's where we're going to be able to find the unusual and unsuspected allies. They're going to help us chisel off just enough votes in unexpected places to make the worst things not viable. We're not going to stop everything, but we could stop a lot of stuff if we lean into that.
Thank you, Pablo. And how about that Project 2025 counter?
I mean, so that on that, I'm sorry, I forgot. On that front, the issue is that progressives and liberals don't operate in a command and control culture. So comparing progressives and liberals to conservatives and centrist conservatives is a dangerous game, because once certain things get framed, they tend to align on process in support of that. On the liberal and progressive side, the deep work of coalition building is slow. It takes time to develop the kind of trust to put together the big tent that is necessary to really live into our values for our democracy. But we are under the figurative and perhaps literal gun these days. So we're going to all have to figure out how to talk to our neighbors and our potentially collaborative organizations in a way that invites agreement on the things where we can agree, and not ankle bite and hamstring our potential allies on the places where we disagree. There are some things you're never going to agree with, and maybe being in the same room with people is a violation of your principles and your values. But if that's not what's going on, then focus on how you can collaborate with each other, is my advice. But I live and work here in Washington, D.C., and I'm often primed to try and get to yes. And so that's my frame of thinking in answering this.
Okay. I was a project manager in DC and I do disagree with you. I do think we need an overall project. Thank you.
Well,
I'll listen to the next person.
I'll just remind you that the 2025 cost, what was it, $40 million to pull off. And a lot of that money came from a handful of billionaires. And when those folks are worried about the viability of their businesses, then maybe they'll invest in a project and a plan that's in opposition. I mean, in the interim, the Congressional Progressive Caucus has great strategic materials available on their webpage. But getting everybody to agree to that is a different story. Betsy.
Oh, thank you. Hi. Well, first of all, I agree with everything that's being said about keeping our Congress people, keeping their pushing them, even the good ones. But I feel like when we talk a lot about we need to get our message out to other people, the people that don't listen to MSNBC or whatever. And I've seen a couple of messages in the chat along this line, but we are confronting this MAGA media blitz. And while we know about it and we pay lip service to that it's a problem, I feel like nobody has an idea of how to overcome it. It's a 24/7 just blitz about how Democrats are communists and the Biden crime family and blah blah blah. And so it almost seems like no matter how great our ideas are, if we don't come up with a way to break through that right-wing media, we are, at best, we're going to end up with 48% of the vote every time, and not enough to get us over the edge. So I guess I agree with the woman saying we need a plan, but I don't hear anyone. I hear people saying we need to stand up, we need to do this, we need to do that. I don't mean on this show. I mean in general. When people ask, what can we do? We have to stand up. But I feel like we haven't seriously, or I haven't seen a serious conversation or plan about how to break through that media silo, media blockade. I just wanted to express that. But I really appreciate all the thoughts and I agree with a whole lot of what has been said. But I feel like that is just absolutely necessary, or we're going to keep coming up short. I have a lovely neighbor in my apartment building, but she listens to Fox all day. And she's a lovely woman. She's a sweet woman, but we can't talk about anything political. I just get questions about, why did Biden do this? Did you hear about that? Anyway, I will stop there.
I mean, you're never going to convince everyone, but I think it's important folks remember that, our media landscape is fracturing, and it's returning to a circumstance that is much more similar to when we had the sort of broadsheet culture in the United States before the corporate consolidation of, a handful of newspapers in every town, and then a handful of news stations in every town or region. So in some ways, we've seen this sort of flowering of different voices in the past. It's not exactly new. None of us were around to experience it specifically, I don't think, but breaking through the fragmented media landscape is going to actually require something that, I feel like I've seen people I don't agree with do very well, which is to give basic content to followers and supporters, and then let them play and create content and sort of go forth and just spread the information. Liberals and progressives tend to be much more interested in getting the message right and thinking that the right words are the most important thing. Much of the brain science research suggests that actually the messenger is more important, not necessarily the words they use, although those can be important, and the repetition, because our brains are primed to absorb that repetition. So I guess, Betsy, I'm not a media specialist. I'm not a media strategist. I just suffer the consequences of when they're doing their stuff really well. And my sense is that we need to get there. I mean, there's some research that suggests one of the reasons that President Trump made inroads with Generation Z voters is because a lot of them simply recognized him. They recognized him from his statements that got rebroadcast on TikTok, and they did not recognize candidate Harris. And they liked, and they had absorbed the idea that, oh, Donald Trump, the guy who, gives real talk and says like it is, why not make him president? Now, I haven't dug into that research. I can't tell you if it's absolutely correct, but based on my interaction with younger voters, it feels like there's something there, but it's not the only thing there. Mary, you asked a question before, so let me give some preference to people who haven't spoken. So Mary Ross, we're going to skip you for Mary, who's next in the queue, and then Rich, and then Pat. So Mary, you got to come off mute. Mary, no last name, needs to come off mute.
Okay, sorry. One thing I wanted to point out is Al Franken years ago started a radio program to counteract the talk radio shows. I wish he'd do it again. Might be hard to pull him out of retirement, but I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we have to, I'm a little bit of a heretic in that I think we need to be careful about getting a lot of energy congealed around things that at this point in time we cannot change. There's a lot of stuff coming at us that we can't immediately fix. And I know it's causing me an incredible amount of angst and discomfort. But that's also, to a certain point, wasted energy. And it is it's one of the targets of the Trump administration right now, is to get us into this place where we feel passive, but we feel angry at ourselves that we're passive, judging ourselves that we're not doing anything. But there's not a whole lot that can be done right now to stop some of these terrible things that are happening. I'm not saying don't pay attention and ignore them. I'm saying be judicious in where your energy falls. And I also think we're assuming very terrible things are going to happen. And it is quite possible that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think all of us would be naive to think that it's not. But at the same time, there are a lot of things in this country that are still operating. The courts for one thing. You know, you know, my deep fear is with Pete Hegseth, you know, once Trump has control of the military, a lot of other things can fall. And so I'm trying not to give into that fear, but I think we can't just fix things. We're not individually or even collectively responsible for how things have turned out. There are dynamics and powers that are beyond our collective control in terms of the traditional way we think about things. I think it's not going to work to think about the us, them, kind of, I'm not quite sure how to explain it, except to say that we have to continue to think right thoughts and right action and be true to our beliefs and our principles. At the same time, kind of we have to forgive ourselves. You know, I mean, we can't force other people to think the way we want them to. And that, to a certain extent, I think has been a certain downfall in the liberal thinking, that we can somehow force people to come around to our thoughts, force people to come around to a different, a more expansive view of things. I think we want that to happen, and I think a more expansive view is absolutely necessary, but we can't force it. I guess that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I don't, so I'm just going to jump in here and say this. I'm not talking about forcing. I think what we're viewing the incoming administration trying to do is an expression of using state power to force certain things. And what I'm talking about is persuading. And persuading starts with an openness to hear someone else's or other organizations' understanding of the world and how they are experiencing that, and then building and then looking for the places where there is in fact common concern. So I'll simply say, most Americans, when asked questions about whether or not they want to see the military deployed to help scoop up immigrant populations for what are fundamentally civil infractions, not criminal infractions, they disagree with the idea of using the U.S. military within our borders, and especially for that purpose, which is exactly why the Trump administration is trying to focus on criminals, and they're papering over the idea that there's actually very few known, undocumented individuals who are in fact criminals.
Yeah,
There's
I
a much-
do not disagree with any of
Yeah.
anything you said just now or earlier. I'm totally agree with you on that.
So in part, my point is, I feel like we're at the danger of the inflection point here is that we're as worried about forcing, or we're so worried about forcing that we don't actually engage in the persuading and looking for potential allies and opening ourselves to those kinds of conversations. I guess that's how I would answer your statement. Rich, you have something to say?
Yes, I'd like to express my fear that the climate problem is going to get worse under Trump because he thinks that it's a hoax. He is taking us out of the UN conference, and he is paranoid about windmills, wind generators, which is really sad because that's half of the clean energy source. He wants to drill, baby drill, and burn more coal, but that's going to hurt us in terms of the rising temperature of the earth, which we are going to suffer from. Thank you.
Pat Moore from California.
Hi there. I was trying to unmute and I was unmuted. I'm feeling my UUSJ board position as I sit here listening to you all. I want to give many, many thanks to Pablo and his words of wisdom and his guidance through all of this. I really appreciate it. I also, being on the board, wanted to remind folks that tonight is a fundraiser, and if you can donate, I personally would appreciate it. It would give us a real boost to see your support. I have a general link that I can put in the chat, Pablo, or I don't know if there's one specific to this evening's fundraiser that you'd rather put in.
Yes, we did put a link in the chat for donations, and I'll repost it.
Well, okay, great. I also wanted to say that earlier, and I'll make this quick, earlier a woman commented that she was disappointed and felt like this meeting was a bit more of a dump than a getting of information. I think that's the words she used. And I wanted to tell her I sense that same thing. And I wanted to let her know that, and I don't remember what the woman's name was. I wanted to let her know that I have some thoughts on that, on how we might conduct a meeting differently based on community organizing efforts that I've participated in, where we would start with questions, pre-planned questions, and ask for specifics, and then maybe later let them make an opening remark. I just wanted to let her know, and you all who are out there thinking maybe the same thing, that there is a kind of a different approach to how we could. In fact, I'm a nuts and bolts person, so the logistics of the meeting, are something that's in front of my mind. But anyway, that's what I wanted to put out there and just let you know, and especially to the woman who had shared her thoughts earlier. Thank you. I'm done.
Great. And Dale.
Thank you, Pablo. I wanted to say first that I'm getting the most help for social justice ideas and actions from UUSJ and the Oregon UU Voices for Justice that is run by Jean Pierce, who's also on SJ board. So I want to thank you for that. And I was pleased that when you told us to call not only our own senators, but senators throughout the country who might be voting on cabinet members, that I did that. I've never called Republicans other places in the country before. And I was pleased that we came close to not having Hegseth approved. We didn't get to the mountaintop, but we came close. And I've done other actions, and we got some of the Democratic House Republicans not to vote, and senators not to vote for the bill that we didn't want. A lot of the immigrants in our area, many of whom are undocumented, farm workers and people of all ages and levels, are Catholic. And so I've been trying to keep in touch with friends who are with Catholic organizations and Centro Cultural. And I've actually been sending UUSJ materials to them. And they're saying, oh, Ann, this is such a good list. Last weekend, they had workshops on Know Your Rights, helping people, packed forum on what people can do. So, we're not going to have those folks come into our church likely, but we can help them and be allies with them. I found out about a rural organizing project that is in every county in Oregon. And I wonder if they're in other states, but you must have other organizations that are in every county, rural and urban. And I'm finding that some of my colleagues on Oregon UU Voices for Justice are having that kind of good dialogue with rural people in that rural organizing project. So look and see if there's something like that or similar to that. Dr. Lorraine asked about how do you talk to people in your own congregation about social justice, and that really struck a chord with me because that's hard sometimes because they rather do fellowship or something else, you know. But for me, for the first time in my life with what's going on right now, my spirituality and personal growth is so tied to social justice. It's not in a silo from that. It's just integrally encased. And I tell them about how on foreign study, I went to Auschwitz and I went to Buchenwald, and I'll never forget those experiences. So for me, it's not a choice of whether I'm out there doing everything that I can right now. I am so compelled, to do this work that we cannot give up. I've wondered about whether we should be doing the kind of thing that Better Angels does, or those kinds of organizations to promote the talking with people that have different views. There's so many good models for how to talk with people with different views. It's hard work, but that's probably right. And I agree with everybody that said this is not just a Trump problem. I mean, I think it started with Citizens United, myself, and started with Fox, and started with the growth of social media. That's, spreading misinformation and disinformation. That's really hard to combat. So, thank you.
I certainly think that it started, listen, this is like a big rope that's been braided over time, right? So
Yep.
certainly that's a contributing factor. Another contributing factor, and I wouldn't have asked this question of Representative Chu, but another contributing factor has been the Democrats have rarely proposed policy that actually speaks to the most consistent voting bloc that they have in their in their coalition. Like, it is controversial for some reason to talk about the needs of African American women and women who are giving birth and holding households together. Like, they haven't wanted to do that, frankly, since at least the rise of the New Democrats. There's been a timidity to put at the center of the party's political platform the kinds of policies and championing of legislative solutions that would really meet those needs. So in some ways, I mean, I almost feel like when this topic of what do we need to be doing and how can we be embracing folks who are suffering comes up, I feel like one of the best things we can do is understand that historically in the United States, all the anxiety that we are feeling writ large as a community has been suffered by queer people, trans people, African American people, and Latino presenting people. And that in the Black church, there's probably the longest tradition of how you sustain resilience and defiance over time. So if you're casting about in your community for how to develop that resilience and how to develop that understanding of what it takes to sustain your soul's buoyancy over time, then please do, not in a opportunistic way or a performative way, but please do try to engage the networks of African American activists in your community or in the UU community. We have Blue, we have I'm dropping the name now. The sister move, the sister. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name.
Sister Source.
There you go. Sister Source. Oh, Reverend Dr. Alma. Yeah, there you go. So like we have resources and networks, and we need to open ourselves up to putting aside some of our anxiety, not to be reckless, but putting aside some of our anxiety and really leaning into the traditions that have in fact been established in the United States that make viable and sustainable the culture of defiance and resistance. And now I'll recognize Ann Anderson.
Just a couple things. And I'm beginning to lose my voice because I've been talking. Number one, of course, from DC, I don't have anybody who can vote in Congress. So it's always interesting to me to consider then what do I do next? But I have decided that I'm really staying right close to home, and I put it in the chat. Let's have stone soup suppers. Let's just get together with our neighbors, remind us how neighborly it is to be together, and make stone soup. And that means everybody brings a little something to put in the soup, and then you cook it, and then you get to talk about how things are going around your neighborhood, and and you set it up so that that you are using I statements and not you statements and things like that. I mean, we know how to do that. And then maybe there's even enough soup for people to take home. And maybe there just hasn't been a lot of food in that household or that other household because it's been tough and the prices are going up and they're going to go up. Just feels to me like it would be good to just start with neighborliness and then we go from there. And so that's the piece that I wanted to offer. And then we're talking about networks. I just wanted to remind, if you don't know about it, about the Movement Voter Project, which actually helps people, helps local grassroots groups all over the country. And they have a huge network, the Movement Voter Project. That's it. Thanks, Pablo.
You're welcome. Vasai, or Vasil, excuse me.
Yes, thank you, Pablo, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. And my name is Vaisal Dokur. I joined from Lakeland, Florida. I'm a member and, in fact, a trustee at Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lakeland. And it was great to be with all of you here tonight. I have not attended, many UUSJ meetings. I became a member last year. I've been a member with UU The Vote, and seeing us coming together is a great thing. And I wanted to also share about how we collaborate with other organizations. And I see in the chat also the churches, Christian churches, yes, they go all the way 100% politic and nobody questions them. And our congregations, fellowships, our liberal faith organization, maybe partially we are self-censoring, maybe there has been attacks on us, but we need to be brave and be more action oriented in the sense that there are a lot of organizations out there that we can collaborate with. I'm in Lakeland, Polk County, Florida, which is a very conservative red county, but we have around 60, a small congregation, but we build a interfaith coalition organization with 6 other churches, temples in the area as an alternative to Christian white nationalist churches and organizations, and we are trying to grow. This moment is all about resistance. I put in there also about the indivisible, above the party lines. I don't have any progressive, or moderate conservative Republican representative. All of my representatives are on the MAGA side, more on the extreme side. And we keep writing them, we keep sending them because we are their constituents also. They need to hear from us. And we shouldn't just, focus on reaching to people or representatives, Democrats, not only thinking like us. We need to reach the ones and let them know that we don't appreciate the way what they are doing it, and they are accountable to us also. So again, my question, obviously, like, how we pick as the, social justice committee, our organizations we collaborate with, and how I can also get in touch with, maybe if there's a Florida branch here, that I would like to be more active.
I
So
understand.
thank you. I've spoken.
Thank you. Shira, and then Kathy, and then Gary, and then I think we're gonna close it off because you guys, to my surprise, wanted to be doing this for an additional hour.
Yes, thank you, Pablo. I'm glad I haven't conked out yet. But I guess I am so energized around this whole issue of our democracy. And I wanted to get back to what we were talking about, the media. And I'm concerned, I don't think it probably won't do a lot of good to convince most people from Fox News to, to pay attention to other parts of the media. But what really concerns me is that since the election, and even pretty recently, several people from my congregation have told me I'm not watching the news. Like they're not watching it at all. And that concerns me because there is, in fact, resistance within the media. I mean, there are people like on MSNBC. If you even go to YouTube, you can see them. There's Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell. And also on YouTube, I've caught Brian Tyler Cohen, who does videos, and he is very insightful. And he's had people like my Congressman Raskin and other very notable people who he interviews, and he just gives really insightful analyses. Also, in the Washington Post, there is Eugene Robinson and David Ignatius and Alexandra Petrie, and they very openly challenge the Trump administration. It won't work for them to mention Bezos, but they can. They challenge the Trump administration in all kinds of other ways, and so I just want to say it really energizes me to pay attention.
So you're writing to all of them.
Right. Thank you so much, Shira.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just want to say it energizes me to really pay attention to these people. And so I think it's important to really get people, if anyone says I'm not watching the news, I am, I'm just feeling numb inside, to tell them to pay attention to the resistance that's going on within the media. I'm done.
And I think, if you look at our last one or two e-news editions, you will see that for example, our Democracy Action Team put some links to some interesting podcasts that really sort of dive into these issues and follow them through with multiple speakers, on the different topics. So yes, I think it's important to stay informed. But I also think it's important to respect people's sense of where they are. If people are not ready to engage, don't harass them and hound them about that. Just remind them that the antidote to their despair is to take action, and that you will be there and ready to help them take action when they tell you they are ready. And you can check in with them every once in a while, but no one likes to have a finger shaken at them. And that's not how we're going to broaden our movement to include people who will join us in our moral concern for our democracy, for immigrants, for LGBTQ and trans folks. That's not how we're going to win this fight.
Yeah, I agree. And also what I'm starting to do is share with people what I'm doing. Just say, oh, well, I'm watching the news selectively and giving them some names.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Kathy and then Gary. I'm sorry, Gary and then Kathy. Gary and then Kathy, because Kathy spoke during the session with Representative Chu. So Gary, make your statement, ask your question, and then we'll hear from Kathy. And if the other gentle lady is still on the call, she can raise her hand again.
Okay, thanks, Pablo. Thank you all. Great source of inspiring information at this very uncertain time in the history of our nation. Just wanted to share with you some sources that I've found helpful, especially Tom Hartman out of Portland, who has a TV and radio show. I put it in the chat, a link to his. He's carrying the ball because the right wing can afford, through their billionaire donators, to support an entire network of conservative talk shows that they focused on the rural areas. So we'll give a listen to Tom and share that with folks. We do need to realize that, we're not going to convince people with facts who are on the opposite side and have been polarized. So we just have to listen to them, and hopefully there'll be an opportunity to gain their trust and share some useful information.
I mean, the facts are important. It's important to have facts to back it up. But you're right, Gary. When someone has been emoted into a policy position, you can't fact them out of that policy position.
That's right.
So you do have to try and figure out a way to crack open their heart, speak to their gut, and that then illuminates a path forward for agreement.
And don't try and waste your time talking to folks who are ready to drink the Kool-Aid. You gotta be discriminating. And
I'm sure some of you
polarization. I've talked to social scientists about this, political social scientists, and the only way to break that is through systems like citizen assemblies, where a diverse group gets together to solve problems out of the political sphere and share their results with our politicians. Thanks for the opportunity to share that.
Yeah, and what I'm talking about is, in voting work or in persuasion work, we talk about, people have they're on a spectrum of 5 points, right? 1, they're with you. 2, they're with you, but they need some shoring up. 3, they're persuadable. They haven't quite made up their mind, or they're thinking through the issues in some way. 4, maybe you can reach them, maybe not. 5, they're not reachable. So I'm not suggesting that we try to deal with the 5s and the 4s. I'm saying that we have to take seriously the work of shoring up the number 2s and finding the number 3s, right? Like we have to, yeah. And for that, there are plenty of tools of how you have difficult conversations with people who may disagree with you.
And one last point, Americans United is a tremendous organization that has been fighting for the separation, to maintain the separation of church and state for over 76 years. Check them out, support them. They are a very important bulwark against what the white Christian nationalists are trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I do want to go on record. I'm not suggesting that you're nasty to your minister. There were a bunch of ministers on. They didn't like that suggestion of hounding your minister. I'm saying collaborate with your minister about how to keep the issue on the plate, right? I don't mean it in a nasty or pejorative way. Kathy, after
Thank
great
you so
patience,
much.
you get the
I
final
appreciate that.
word.
I'm just basically going based on what Gary and Ewan said in terms of listening, in terms of cracking open their hearts. An empathy exercise is basically a page I took from Ralph Nader's book, Unstoppable, that came out a few years ago, where it's a left-right alliance. There's a lot more in common with people than you expect. You don't have to be slicing and dicing what these different levels are, because everybody wants affordable health care. Everybody wants jobs. Everybody wants to put their kids through school. Everybody wants to spend less energy on fuel. Everybody wants clean air, clean water. Fires are agnostic to whether you're blue or red. Hurricanes are agnostic. So if you craft it more that way, and that's how I'm more Ralph Nader, because I am in touch with my Pennsylvania high school classmates who don't want their kids to be like Trump. But because under 2 Democratic administrations, Obama, and that's why they didn't want to see any more of the same, their lives got worse. They lost their homes. Obama bailed out Wall Street instead of Main Street, so 5.1 million homes were lost by Main Street. It's all this empathy exercise that you're actually talking about in terms of listening in order to meet them where they are. Otherwise, if we keep sticking to these identity politics, which unfortunately Rachel Maddow does touch upon, that's what media wants to do, to keep us divided and keep this us versus them. So I totally resonate with what you and Gary have said in terms of just getting all the levels and then just cracking open everybody's hearts, because there's a lot that we don't understand as educated people, how ordinary working people, because UUs are the most highly educated congregation I remember hearing or reading somewhere. But that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for having this forum.
You're very welcome. I do want to say though, I mean, I agree with you, but I also think it's important to I think the jury is still out as to why exactly the election outcome occurred the way it did. And I'm very nervous about those who rush to blame sort of like DEI or wokeness in some way. I agree with you that we've got to figure out how to reach potential legislators and other voters and collaborators in our moral concern that go beyond the identity politics as it's been expressed in the last couple of cycles of election. But I think it's also important to remember that the United States actually, for many years, has organized itself around that same identity politics, and it more often than not, it's to the detriment of those same groups. So I don't want to lose sight of the big picture, that when we finally start to get a more diverse, ethnically and racially diverse United States, the overwhelming backlash takes us in the direction of fascism. And there's a reason for that. So
very well said.
I have plenty of family members in Pennsylvania and friends in Ohio. I know exactly what you're talking about. And we also have to remember that some of this legacy really just comes down to Stephen Miller's are white supremacists. Steve Bannon is a white supremacist. They're probably also misogynists. I haven't seen their written statements on those things, but the elephant in the room here is that there is a motivation for these policies that has nothing to do with those people just as voters. It's a motivation to use a legal process to cleanse the United States of undesirables. And the definition of those undesirables, we suspect what it is, but we don't know for sure, but it's definitely operating in the background. And to be frank, we've known for at least 200 years that that's the kind of thing that happens in the United States, because as Ann Anderson will tell you, in Washington, D.C., racial justice and racialized policies have been operating for the explicit institutionalized repression of the population here, precisely because it was deemed to be too black. So I'm with you, Kathy, and I want to add a sidecar to your motorcycle.
Of course, of course. I mean, it definitely is Citizens United and the corporatization of the Dems that, brought them away from their core values of being for the common and the working people and the underclass, because war policies all the same.
Yeah.
Obama expanded Bush's 2 wars to 7, but that doesn't make mainstream news.
And if you guys recall, one of the big differences between the Biden-Trump election and the Harris-Trump election was, in the Biden-Trump election, enough mega personalities on Wall Street and perhaps the big players in Main Street hesitated to put the thumb on the scale in favor of Trump. They were still worried about his personality and his volatility.
He's not warmongering enough. He should have started the war with Iran, but he didn't. So yeah, he pissed off a lot of military people. We should have been in war with Iran.
And
when Soleimani, yeah.
And
anyway,
yeah, and when they hesitated to do that, Biden lost. I mean, Biden won. In this last election, Jamie Dimon was making comments on behalf of Wall Street as early as 2023, saying, we have no worries about President Trump in a second administration. He's not erratic. He's not this. He's not that. And he was paving the way for the money train that they're all expecting. But that was a big difference between those two elections.
Oh, interesting. Thanks, Pablo. That's really interesting. I didn't even see it that way. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. So if there's no other burning statement by someone who hasn't already spoken, then I would like to thank you for your attention. Your attention is valuable, especially in this these days, this social media environment. And I want to bid you a good evening. And if you want to email me, you can get in touch with me at info@uusj.org, and we can talk about anything else that you have to discuss. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you who are off camera, we're going to start removing folks and close out the session. And we'll have a little bit of a debrief with me and one or two people, and then we'll go to bed. Don't take it personally when you're removed, and no, we won't report you. We just don't know if you're actually behind your camera, so we can't speak to you. And I invite any USJ trustees who are still lingering to hang on. Rita, Lisa, Mary, are you guys all waiting to ask one final question of some sort? Or
I just need to know, how do we get a copy of what's in the chat? Because there are lots of good links.
well, I guess you could go to the 3 little dots and press save chat.
Okay, and then I put it somewhere. I don't know where it goes when it's saved.
You'll have to figure that part out.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Mary, are you needing some help with something? You're speaking, but you're on mute. And you have a facial expression that looks to me like a little bit of perplexity, or perplexed by something.
Shut
And I
up.
don't like to remove people. Okay, I'm about to remove you, Mary. Okay, going once, going twice. Hey, it's just us. Malia, are you still there? Or did you go to attend to household needs? Okay, I'm gonna assume that Malia's not there. Paulette,
Yes, sir.
we are gonna need the 2 chunks. I don't want the talk distributed with the hour and 15 minutes that follow.
Alrighty, yep. So
Yeah.
just rep to choose message in one block then.
Yeah, up until the point where, I say the whatever version of goodbye, thank you, this is our soft close. I do want to save the video from the
Yep.
second half because I might want to go back and review that, but I don't want to distribute that at all.
Okay, alrighty, yep, I'll just, I'll save it 2 different ways then, and then, the full version will be in the background.
Right. And other than that weird thing and craziness with the spotlighting, I think it went okay. I don't quite understand what people expect from members of Congress, but I get maybe I have
Well,
to.
they expect them to do more than just talking points, I mean, and I'm not saying, I mean, I was very impressed by Representative Chu. I came into it without much hope because my own personal stuff, but she impressed me. So, but yeah.
Oh. But
Who's
every time I think to myself, we UUs are super progressive and liberal and whatever, then the comments during the second hour, they show you how oddly not progressive and liberal they really are.
Yep.
I'm gonna remove Malia since Malia is not actually here. Also,
I just showed up here. Wait.
Oh.
I mean, I wasn't. I'm sorry. And I have a broken camera that I just went. I'm sorry. I have been putting kids to bed and carrying this around the house for hours. And when I did it, but then I was like, oh, look, I think it's done. And I was like, oh, look, it's just Pablo and Paulette and the ghost me. And, but I will chime in to say, I too was all about, I was frustrated. I do feel like she really could. It was kind of the weakest version of anything we could have gotten to just give us a bunch of Democratic talking points. And it was pretty disempowering. And I think it would be good to debrief more with other folks. I thought she was very disappointing, and you were awesome, Pablo. Congratulations. And I was like, I will, when I have time tomorrow, send something out to the rest of the board and just say good job.
Thank you.
And I loved how you really stepped up to the plate because she didn't say anything. And then it was like, okay, someone better say something. And you did a great job. And people really responded to it. And the turnout was amazing. So great.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I wouldn't have her back as a speaker, honestly. Whatever.
I mean, it's sort of like I gave her her shot at the plate.
I know.
She could have shown up with fire and brimstone for, if there's any group.
I know. And she had it was served up over and over. And then Eliseo's question, and it was she just I thought, oh god, whatever. So
Yeah,
but
well,
I am gonna go now, and you
okay.
also probably should go because it's really late.
Yes. I mean, my wife and child are already in bed, and I have to turn off lights for them. But
Well, take it. You worked all weekend. All right. Anyway, you do what you want to do. Good job, and I will for real leave.
bye-bye. Okay. Paulette,
Yes.
anything you want to say to me as part of the debrief?
No, I don't think so. Yeah,
Initial,
I think one thing that we do want to do is get the
webinar package?
well, that. Yeah, get the webinar package, but I think we want to get the recording out. You know, because I mean, to keep people's interest.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I'm not willing to share. So you and I are going to have some work on this. I don't want to share the recording with people who didn't pay. Fuck them.
Gotcha.
So if they pay, if they're in that population of 250 odd people, with the exception of Ursula, like we can look through it and say, oh, here's a big donor to USJ who just didn't want to pay a ticket. Like with the exception of somebody who's like, giving big dollars to USJ, our kind of big dollars. Like I feel like anybody who asked for a free ticket, I mean, Paulette, you and I, we've discussed this in plenty of times. The average you makes 2 and 3 times our income.
Yep.
So if they couldn't pay even $25 for the video, then they don't get the video until we decide to put it out for free on YouTube. Right now, I don't know how we're going to handle the technology, because right now, once you put it up on YouTube, the 100 people who know about YouTube can go look at it for free, right?
Right, but what I'll do with YouTube, I can make it unpublic, I don't remember what term they use. And then people will people will need the link to know that it's there. So
Yeah.
that's how I'll do it, and then after, come August, maybe we'll open it up so people.
I mean, we'll probably open it up before that, right? But we'll open it up when it makes sense to help us, right? Not, not to. Anyway.
Yep. So I'll when I put it on YouTube, I'll put it up as private
Okay.
initially.
Well, either way, the 2 big chunks should be kept separate. I don't want anyone other than you, me, or maybe some trustees to see that second half. And talk to you tomorrow. I really have to use the bathroom.
Okay. Yep. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.